Can faith truly endure and take root amidst family schemes, clumsy lies, and very real human weaknesses? The ancient pages of the book of Genesis, the foundational text for both the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Old Testament, do far more than simply recount the origins of a people or a religion. They serve as profound mirrors reflecting the depths of human nature, where faith and doubt, love and jealousy, obedience and rebellious intent intertwine in a complex and often dramatic dance. The setting may be the arid deserts, makeshift tents, and scarce wells of the ancient Near East, but the questions, struggles, and lessons these narratives pose are universal and resonate powerfully even today. In the journey ahead through 7 eventful chapters of Genesis, chapters 21 through 27, we will hold our breath as we witness the pivotal turns in the lives of the patriarchs. Witness the sheer joy and the fulfillment of a long-awaited promise with the miraculous birth of Isaac, yet also feel the pain of separation as Hagar and Ishmael are forced to leave, beginning their own journey under God's providence. Follow Abraham through the most terrifying test of faith imaginable atop Mount Moriah, where fatherly love and loyalty to God are pushed to their absolute limit. Feel the weight of loss as Abraham mourns Sarah and negotiates for the Cave of Machpelah, the first piece of owned land, an eternal heritage in the promised land. Embark on a quest guided by faith and divine providence to find Rebekah, Isaac's wife, from distant kin, sowing the seeds for the next generation. Explore the complexities of family dynamics with the birth of the twins Esau and Jacob, the fateful prophecy foretelling an overturned hierarchy, and the moment Esau despises his birthright for a mere bowl of stew. Accompany Isaac as he confronts famine, repeats his father's mistakes, yet perseveres in digging wells to find life-giving water and establishes peace amidst conflict. And finally, experience the suspense of Jacob and Rebekah's calculated plot to steal the patriarchal blessing, leading to Esau's consuming hatred and Jacob's desperate flight to Haran. This article will not merely retell these familiar stories. Our objective is to delve deeply, analyzing the events, exploring the complex motivations of key figures like Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Esau, understanding the specific cultural historical context, and, crucially, uncovering the layers of theological meaning and profound life lessons embedded within the text. To achieve this goal, the article is systematically structured. First, we will proceed chapter by chapter, from 21 through 27, examining each narrative segment and its specific story in detail. Subsequently, a significant section will synthesize and analyze the major themes that run consistently through these chapters, such as covenant faithfulness, the interplay of divine will and human action, family conflict, and the significance of blessings and inheritance. Finally, we will draw conclusions and offer reflections on the value and enduring significance of these ancient, yet ever-relevant, texts. After decades of waiting, doubting, and even making flawed decisions born from impatience, chapter 21 of Genesis opens with a momentous event, the seemingly impossible promise of God finally becoming reality. However, the joy of fulfillment is quickly overshadowed by the complex consequences of the past and the inherent conflicts within Abraham's household, demonstrating that the path of the covenant is never smooth but always interwoven with blessings and trials, laughter and tears. The Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. Gen 21:1 ESV. The opening verse resonates like a powerful affirmation of God's faithfulness. Despite the advanced age of Abraham, 100, and Sarah, 90, and Sarah's own earlier disbelief, chapter 18, she conceived and bore a son at the exact time God had appointed. The child was named Isaac, Yitzchak, a name meaning, he laughs, or laughter, serving as a constant reminder of both Abraham's and Sarah's initial reactions to this extraordinary promise. This time, Sarah's laughter was not one of skepticism, but of overwhelming joy and wonder at God's power. She exclaimed, "God has made laughter for me, everyone who hears will laugh over me." Gen 21:6 ESV. This laughter was not hers alone, it was infectious, meant to be shared by all who witnessed the miracle. Isaac's birth was more than just a family event, it marked the tangible beginning of the covenant people, living proof that God keeps his word, transcending biological limitations and human doubt. The circumcision of Isaac on the 8th day further underscored the boy's special place within the covenant relationship with God. The joy, however, was short-lived. During the significant feast celebrating Isaac's weaning, a milestone marking his transition from infancy, Sarah witnessed an act that fractured the already fragile family dynamic. Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, laughing, Metzachek. Gen 21:9, ESV. The word used here for laughing or mocking shares the same root as Isaac's name, Yitzchak, creating a poignant and ironic wordplay. The precise nature of this action isn't detailed. It could have been innocent child's play, malicious teasing, or perhaps even a subtle assertion of the older son Ishmael's status. Regardless of the intent, Sarah's reaction was immediate and severe. She demanded of Abraham, "Cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac." Gen 21:10, ESV. Her motive was clear: to protect Isaac's sole inheritance rights and exclusive covenant status. This reaction reveals fierce maternal protectiveness, but perhaps also lingering insecurity or long-held resentment towards Hagar and Ishmael. The conflict was not merely childish squabbling, it struck at the core issue of inheritance and covenant standing. Sarah's demand caused Abraham great distress. The matter was very displeasing in Abraham's sight because of his son, Gen 21:11, ESV. He loved Ishmael, his firstborn son. This highlights Abraham's deeply human struggle, caught between personal affection and the demands related to the covenant. It was at this juncture that God intervened. He instructed Abraham to listen to Sarah regarding Isaac being the designated heir. "Through Isaac shall your offspring be named," but he simultaneously reassured Abraham about Ishmael's future, "And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring." Gen 21:12-13, ESV. God validated the covenant line through Isaac but did not abandon Ishmael. He understood Abraham's pain and the complexity of the situation. Early the next morning, Abraham obeyed. His actions were minimal but charged with emotion, providing basic provisions of bread and water, placing them on Hagar's shoulder along with the child, and sending them away. Abraham's obedience, even when heartbreaking, is again a central theme. This section exposes the human cost of fulfilling the divine plan and portrays a God who is both steadfast in his covenant and yet understands and provides for even those pushed to the margins. Sent away with meager supplies, Hagar and Ishmael soon faced the harsh reality of the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water was gone, Hagar fell into utter despair. She placed her son under a bush, sat down, about a bowshot away, and wept bitterly, unable to watch him die. It is a powerful image of maternal anguish and helplessness in the face of imminent death. Yet, in this moment of deepest despair, God heard, not Hagar's cries, but the voice of the boy, Gen 21:17. The angel of God called to Hagar from heaven, comforting her, "Fear not," reiterating the promise that Ishmael would become a great nation. Then, the miracle, God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. Gen 21:19. Hagar drew water, gave her son a drink, and saved both their lives. Subsequently, Ishmael grew up in the wilderness of Paran under God's protection. God was with the boy, becoming a skilled archer and marrying an Egyptian woman. This passage serves as a powerful testament to God's compassion and faithfulness, extending beyond the primary covenant lineage. He hears the cries of the outcast and desperate, provides life-sustaining resources, water, and upholds his promises concerning Ishmael's future. The narrative then shifts focus to Abraham's relationship with the surrounding peoples. Abimelech, king of Gerar, possibly the same name/title as the king Abraham encountered earlier, or his successor, along with Phicol, his army commander, approached Abraham. They explicitly acknowledged God's favor upon him. "God is with you in all that you do." Gen 21:22. Recognizing that Abraham's strength and prosperity stemmed from God, they proactively sought a peace treaty, an oath of non-aggression. Abraham agreed but seized the opportunity to address a specific grievance. Abimelech's servants had violently seized a well dug by Abraham. Abimelech professed ignorance. To resolve the dispute and solidify the agreement, Abraham made a covenant with Abimelech, presenting sheep and oxen. Significantly, he set apart 7 ewe lambs as a tangible witness, Akedah in Hebrew potentially related to oath/witness, that he had dug that particular well, Beer. From this event, the place was named Beersheba, the well of the oath or well of 7. Abraham further marked the site by planting a tamarisk tree, a symbol of longevity, and calling upon the name of the Lord, the everlasting God, El Olam. Gen 21:33. This section demonstrates Abraham's growing stature as a recognized power, capable of establishing diplomatic relations and securing vital resources through formal covenants, oaths, and witnesses. His act of worship at Beersheba grounds this political and economic achievement in his relationship with the everlasting God, indicating a deepening understanding of God's eternal nature. Chapter 21 is rich with emotional depth and profound lessons. God's faithfulness remains the central theme, the promise regarding Isaac is fulfilled, and the promises concerning Ishmael are reiterated and secured. Alongside this, the chapter unflinchingly portrays human complexity, joy mingled with conflict, love intertwined with pain, Abraham, jealousy and protectiveness, Sarah, and utter despair, Hagar. It shows that human decisions, like Abraham's earlier relationship with Hagar, have long-lasting and painful consequences. Yet, God's sovereign providence is ever present. He directs events according to his plan while demonstrating compassion even for those outside the main covenant line, intervening directly multiple times. Finally, the chapter highlights the crucial importance of essential resources, water, and the necessity of establishing peaceful relationships, covenants, demonstrating that faith is lived out in the practical realities of life. And significantly, key events prompt acts of worship, affirming God's ultimate place in the patriarch's life. Immediately following the tumultuous events of chapter 21, where promises were fulfilled amidst painful separation, Abraham's faith is once again pushed to the absolute extreme in chapter 22. This chapter contains one of the most debated, profound, and challenging narratives in the entire Bible, the story of the Akedah, meaning, the binding, where God tests Abraham's loyalty with a seemingly unimaginable command. This chapter serves not only as a personal crucible for Abraham but also as a deep revelation about the nature of faith, obedience, and God himself. The narrative begins abruptly, after these things God tested, Nissa, Abraham. Gen 22:1, ESV. The Hebrew word Nissa implies testing, proving, or refining, not tempting in the negative sense of enticing to evil. It is the nature of the test itself that is truly shocking. God commands Abraham, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering, Olah, on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you." Gen 22:2, ESV. This command is brutal on multiple levels. It appears to directly contradict God's own promises, which centered on Isaac as the heir of the covenant. It challenges the very character of a loving God by demanding human sacrifice, a practice later explicitly condemned in the Mosaic Law. Most painfully, it targets Abraham's deepest affection, "Your only son, whom you love." This specific phrasing underscores the immense cost of obedience. What was the purpose of such a test? Perhaps to reveal the depth of Abraham's reverence for God, fear of God, his ultimate loyalty, placing allegiance to God even above his most precious human love. Abraham's response to this horrifying command is immediate and decisive obedience. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him, and his son Isaac. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. Gen 22:3, ESV. The text records no questions, no lamentations, no hesitation. His resolve is conveyed through swift, orderly action, though his inner turmoil must have been immense. The journey lasts 3 days, emphasizing the duration of his silent agony and unwavering commitment. 3 days of walking towards the place of sacrifice. We can only speculate about his thoughts: unwavering faith, suppressed grief, a profound trust that God would somehow intervene, perhaps even resurrect Isaac, as Hebrews 11 verses 17 to 19 suggests. His words to the servants before ascending the mountain: "Stay here with the donkey, I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you." Gen 22:5 ESV, using the plural, we, and promising to come again, hint at a deeply held hope, a trust in a positive outcome despite the dreadful command. Ascending the mountain, a poignant and tense moment unfolds. Abraham lays the wood for the offering on Isaac, his son, who is unknowingly carrying the means of his own sacrifice, an image resonant with later Christian interpretations of Jesus carrying the cross. Isaac, perhaps sensing the gravity or peculiarity of the situation, breaks the silence with an innocent, logical question: "Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering?" Gen 22:7 ESV. Abraham's reply has become one of the most famous declarations of faith: "God will provide for himself, Yireh, the lamb for a burnt offering, my son." Gen 22:8 ESV. Is this an evasion? A statement of desperate faith? A prophecy? Regardless of interpretation, the answer expresses absolute trust in God's provision: Yireh, he will see/he will provide, even when all circumstances point to the contrary. The phrase, "so they went both of them together," is repeated afterwards, emphasizing their unity and shared path, despite the horrific purpose looming ahead. Upon reaching the designated place, Abraham's actions proceed with ritualistic yet heart-stopping deliberation. He builds an altar, arranges the wood, binds his son Isaac, the act of Akedah, and lays him on the wood upon the altar. The moment Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son, Gen 22:10 ESV, represents the apex of obedience and the limit of human endurance. At that precise, critical instant, the angel of the Lord calls out from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." Gen 22:11, halting the sacrifice. "Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him." The explanation immediately follows, revealing the test's true purpose: "For now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." Gen 22:12 ESV. The objective was not Isaac's death, but the revelation of Abraham's heart, his reverence for God, his ultimate loyalty. Isaac's apparent submission throughout this ordeal is also noteworthy. God's intervention extended beyond merely stopping the sacrifice. As Abraham lifted his eyes, he saw a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. Gen 22:13 ESV. He took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. Abraham named that place Yahweh-Yireh, meaning, "the Lord will provide," or, "the Lord sees." The text adds the proverb derived from this event: "On the mount of the Lord it shall be provided." Gen 22:14 ESV. This name serves as a confirmation of Abraham's earlier declaration of faith: "God will provide." It becomes a sacred title for God, the one who not only sees the need but actively intervenes and provides miraculously, especially in impossible circumstances. The substitute ram became a powerful symbol of God's provision and mercy. Following this profound event, the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time. On this occasion, God swore by his own name, the most solemn oath possible, promising to bless Abraham abundantly, specifically because of his extraordinary act of obedience. "By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you." Gen 22:16-17 ESV. The blessing is reiterated and expanded more emphatically than ever before. His descendants would be as numerous as the stars and the sand, they would possess the gate of their enemies, and crucially, "In your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice." Gen 22:18 ESV. The universal blessing for all humanity is explicitly linked to Abraham's willingness to obey God, even at the greatest imaginable personal cost. Chapter 22 offers multi-layered lessons about the nature of faith, it is not passive belief but radical obedience and complete trust, even when God's commands seem incomprehensible or contradictory to his promises. It reveals the nature of God. He tests to refine, but he is also faithful, merciful, sparing Isaac, and sovereignly provides. His ultimate desire is not blind ritual, and certainly not child sacrifice, implicitly critiqued by the provision of a substitute, but a heart of reverence and obedience. The story also speaks to the cost of discipleship, which can involve immense personal sacrifice and wrestling with difficult divine commands. Within Christian theology, the Akedah is widely seen as a powerful foreshadowing, type, of God the Father offering his only Son, Jesus Christ, as a sacrifice for humanity. Isaac carrying the wood parallels Jesus carrying the cross. The ram offered as a substitute points to Christ, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. Finally, the chapter's conclusion with the genealogy of Nahor, Abraham's brother, Gen 22:20-24, is not extraneous. It serves a crucial narrative function by reconnecting Abraham's lineage with his relatives in Mesopotamia. Specifically, it introduces the family line that will produce Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel, granddaughter of Nahor, the central figure in chapter 24, the future wife of Isaac, the very son just spared from sacrifice. This skillfully sets the stage for the next generation and the continuation of the covenant line. After the theological heights and dramatic tension of Mount Moriah, the narrative flow returns to the inevitable rhythms of life, one of which is loss. Chapter 23 shifts focus from extraordinary tests of faith to a deeply human and practical reality, the death of Sarah, Abraham's lifelong companion through decades of wandering and waiting. This somber event becomes the catalyst for a significant action by Abraham, one laden with both practical necessity and profound symbolism, securing the first permanent, legal foothold in the Promised Land, establishing a tangible foundation for the future legacy. The text records Sarah's lifespan with notable precision. Sarah lived 127 years, these were the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died at Kiriath-arba, that is, Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. Gen 23:1-2, ESV. Reaching 127 years signifies a long life, yet her passing remains a profound loss. The specific mention that Abraham came to mourn, lispod, and to weep, livkota, for her underscores both the formal, customary expression of grief and his deep personal sorrow. Sarah was more than just his wife, she was his faithful partner through migration, famine, trials, and the eventual fulfillment of the promise concerning Isaac. Her death closes a significant chapter in the patriarchal family's history and confronts Abraham with the immediate, practical need for a final resting place for his beloved wife. Seeing Abraham, the man of immense faith from the previous chapter, now grieving and weeping, offers a poignant portrayal of the patriarch's humanity. Facing his grief, Abraham still had to act. He stood up from before his dead, a gesture signifying the transition from mourning to necessary action, and addressed the local inhabitants, the Hittites, sons of Hate. His approach reveals remarkable humility and diplomatic wisdom. I am a stranger and a sojourner, ger wa with Macron, among you. Gen 23:4, ESV. Despite his growing wealth and status, previously acknowledged even by King Abimelech, Abraham presented himself respectfully as an outsider, a temporary resident seeking a favor from the established landowners, honoring their rights and authority. His request was clear and direct: give me property among you for a burying place, a kutsath keber, literally, a possession of a grave, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. The immediate need was burial, but the term he sought was possession, permanent, owned property, not just temporary use. This humble approach, coupled with a clear and long-term objective, demonstrates Abraham's careful consideration. It showed respect while paving the way for a legitimate negotiation over land ownership. The Hittites responded with considerable deference: hear us, my lord, you are a mighty prince, Nisi Elohim, Prince of God, among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will withhold from you his tomb to hinder you from burying your dead. Gen 23:6, ESV. Their offer sounds exceptionally generous, allowing Abraham to choose the very best location. However, Abraham likely understood the social and commercial etiquette of the region. He bowed gratefully but politely declined this general offer. He reiterated his desire to buy the land and specified the exact plot he wanted, the Cave of Machpelah, located at the end of a field belonging to Ephron, son of Zohar. He even asked the Hittites present to intercede with Ephron on his behalf, Gen 23:7-9. When Ephron himself responded publicly at the city gate, the customary place for legal and public transactions, he made an even grander gesture. "No, my lord, hear me, I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. In the sight of the sons of my people I give it to you. Bury your dead." Gen 23:11, ESV. Ephron offering the entire field, when Abraham had only inquired about the cave at its edge, is a classic element of polite bargaining. This wasn't likely a genuine offer to give away valuable property for free, but rather a customary opening gambit, placing the burden on Abraham to insist on paying, thereby validating the sale publicly and fairly. Abraham navigated the social niceties perfectly. He bowed again, publicly acknowledged the offer, but firmly insisted on paying. "If you will, hear me, I give the price of the field. Accept it from me, that I may bury my dead there." Gen 23:13, ESV. He now agreed to purchase the entire field, as Ephron had linked it to the cave. Only then did Ephron state the price, still maintaining a veneer of casualness. "My lord, listen to me, a piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver, what is that between you and me? Bury your dead." Gen 23:15, ESV. 400 silver shekels was, in fact, a substantial sum, reflecting the land's true value. Ephron's downplaying phrasing was part of the polite conclusion to the negotiation. Abraham raised no objection to the price. He immediately accepted and proceeded to weigh out for Ephron the silver that he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, according to the weights current among the merchants. Gen 23:16, ESV. Weighing the silver publicly, using a recognized commercial standard, ensured the transaction's legitimacy and transparency beyond any doubt. Abraham's insistence on buying was crucial. Accepting the land as a gift could have implied future obligations or potential disputes over ownership by Ephron's heirs. Paying the full price, publicly witnessed, secured undisputed, permanent legal title, Akutsath Keber, for Abraham and his descendants. This act established the first tangible, legal foothold for the covenant family in the Promised Land, grounding God's divine promise in concrete, earthly reality. The text meticulously records the formal transfer of ownership. So the field of Ephron in Machpelah, which was to the east of Mamre, the field with the cave that was in it and all the trees that were in the field, throughout its whole area, was made sure, secured, legally transferred, to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the Hittites, before all who went in at the gate of his city. Gen 23:17-18, ESV. This detailed description functions like a legal deed, affirming the certainty of the acquisition. Following this, Abraham buried Sarah there. The Cave of Machpelah thus became far more than just a tomb. It stands as the first piece of the Promised Land legally owned by the patriarchs. It represents a profound act of faith in the future fulfillment of God's promise, a down payment on the inheritance to come. It became the sacred ancestral burial site, the place where Abraham himself, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Leah would later be laid to rest, anchoring the family's history, identity, and destiny to this specific location within Canaan. Machpelah became a place of memory, grief, enduring hope, and belonging. Chapter 23 imparts several significant lessons. Foremost is the respect shown for the dead and the living's responsibility to provide a proper burial. Secondly, it highlights the importance of legacy and family, as Abraham looks beyond his immediate grief to secure a permanent place for future generations. Thirdly, the chapter demonstrates wisdom in worldly affairs. Abraham navigates complex social and legal customs with humility, respect, and shrewdness to achieve his objective peacefully and legally. Faith does not negate the need for practical wisdom. Fourth, the purchase serves as an embodiment of faith grounded in reality, translating God's abstract promise of land into tangible, albeit small, ownership. Finally, this seemingly straightforward real estate transaction lays a critical foundation for the future, establishing the patriarchs' undeniable physical connection to the very land God had promised their descendants would inherit. Following the establishment of a permanent burial place in chapter 23, securing the family's physical presence in the land, chapter 24 turns to the crucial task of securing its future lineage. Abraham is now old, Isaac is his sole, beloved heir through whom the covenant promises must flow, and finding the right wife for him is not merely a personal matter but one of profound theological significance. This chapter, the longest in Genesis, unfolds as a beautiful narrative tapestry woven with threads of unwavering faith, meticulous divine providence, and purposeful human agency, detailing the extraordinary mission to find Rebekah. The narrative opens by emphasizing Abraham's advanced age, old and well advanced in years, and God's comprehensive blessing upon him, Gen 24:1. With his own life nearing its end, Abraham recognizes the urgent need to arrange Isaac's marriage to ensure the continuation of the covenant line. His primary instruction, delivered with utmost seriousness, is that Isaac must not marry a woman from among the Canaanites, the local inhabitants of the land. The reason for this prohibition is clear. Canaanite culture was deeply intertwined with idolatry and practices abhorrent to the ways of the God Abraham served. Intermarriage posed a significant risk of assimilation, potentially diluting or corrupting the unique spiritual heritage and covenant identity God had established with Abraham. To preserve this legacy, Abraham instructed his servant to seek a wife from his own country and kindred, specifically, from his relatives still living in Mesopotamia. These relatives, descended from Terah like Abraham, shared a common ancestral background and might still retain some knowledge, however faded, of the true God, making a potential bride from this pool far more suitable for integration into the covenant family. To underscore the gravity of this task, Abraham summoned his eldest servant, the one entrusted with managing his entire household, traditionally identified as Eliezer of Damascus, though unnamed here. He required the servant to swear a most solemn oath, involving the ancient ritual of placing his hand under Abraham's thigh, a gesture possibly symbolizing lineage, descendants, and the vital importance of the promise, Gen 24:2-3. The mission was explicit: travel back to Abraham's homeland and select a wife for Isaac from his relatives there. The servant, demonstrating foresight and responsibility, raised a critical practical question: perhaps the woman may not be willing to follow me to this land. Must I then take your son back to the land from which you came? Gen 24:5. Abraham's response was emphatic and absolute: Isaac must never return to Mesopotamia. This land, Canaan, was the promised land. Instead of doubt, Abraham expressed profound faith, declaring that the same Lord God who called him out of Ur and promised Canaan to his offspring would send his angel before the servant to guarantee success, Gen 24:7. If, despite this divine assistance, the chosen woman refused to come, the servant would be released from his oath, but Isaac's place remained firmly in Canaan. This exchange reveals Abraham's active faith, trusting God's sovereign guidance while taking necessary human steps, and his unwavering commitment to God's geographical promise. Equipped with 10 camels laden with valuable gifts, signifying the wealth and status of his master and the importance of the mission, the servant embarked on the long journey to Mesopotamia, specifically to the city of Nahor, likely near Haran. Strategically arriving at the city well in the evening, the customary time when women came to draw water, he made his camels kneel down, Gen 24:10-11. Rather than relying on chance or his own assessment alone, the servant immediately turned to prayer. He earnestly addressed the Lord, God of my master Abraham, pleading for success, Kara, cause to meet/grant success, and asking God to show steadfast love, Hesed, to his master, Gen 2400 hours 12. His prayer then became remarkably specific. He proposed a sign, a test by which God might reveal his chosen one: let the young woman to whom I shall say, please let down your jar that I may drink, and who shall say, drink, and I will water your camels. Let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. Gen 2400 hours 14. This was not an arbitrary sign, it was designed to reveal crucial character traits: kindness to a stranger, exceptional generosity, hospitality, diligence, and a proactive willingness to serve far beyond expectation. Watering 10 thirsty camels was a demanding physical task. It was an act of faith seeking tangible divine confirmation. The response was immediate and astonishing. Before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with her water jar on her shoulder. Gen 2400 hours 15. God's timing was perfect. Furthermore, her lineage was precisely what Abraham had specified. She was his grandniece, directly from his kindred. The text also notes her beauty and virginity. Gen 2400 hours 16. As she filled her jar, the servant ran to meet her and requested a drink. She immediately obliged with grace. Drink, my lord. Gen 2400 hours 18. Then came the crucial fulfillment of the sign. After he had finished drinking, she volunteered, completely unprompted, I will draw water for your camels also, until they have finished drinking. Gen 2400 hours 19. She then energetically and repeatedly drew water from the well until all 10 camels were satisfied. The servant could only watch in silent amazement. The man gazed at her in silence, recognizing the clear hand of God orchestrating the encounter and answering his specific prayer down to the last detail. Rebekah's actions at the well instantly revealed a character perfectly suited for the significant role she was unknowingly being chosen for. Her immediate willingness to give water to an unknown traveler demonstrated innate kindness and hospitality, core virtues in ancient Near Eastern culture. Her spontaneous offer to water 10 camels, a laborious undertaking requiring significant physical effort and time, showcased remarkable generosity, diligence, and a servant heart. She didn't just do the minimum, she went extravagantly beyond. Her respectful address, my lord, showed poise. Later events would further reveal her decisiveness in agreeing to leave her home. God, through the servant's test, identified a woman not just of suitable lineage, but of exceptional character, fit to become a matriarch of the covenant people. Convinced by the fulfilled sign, the servant presented Rebekah with expensive gifts, a gold nose ring and 2 heavy gold bracelets, even before formally asking about her family. Gen 2400 hours 22. Upon learning her identity, daughter of Bethuel, granddaughter of Nahor, and receiving confirmation that lodging was available, the servant bowed low and worshipped God, explicitly thanking him for his guidance and faithfulness in leading him directly to his master's relatives. Gen 24:26-27. Rebekah ran home to report the encounter. Her brother, Laban, perhaps spurred by the sight of the valuable gold jewelry, quickly ran out to meet the servant at the well and offered a warm welcome. Come in, O blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand outside? For I have prepared the house and a place for the camels. Gen 2400 hours 31. Once inside, however, the servant displayed focus and integrity, refusing to eat until he had stated his mission. Gen 2400 hours 33. He then meticulously recounted the entire sequence of events: Abraham's charge, the oath, his journey, his specific prayer at the well, Rebekah's precise fulfillment of the sign, and his conviction of God's direct guidance. By transparently laying out the divine orchestration, he presented the proposal not merely as his master's wish, but as God's evident will. He concluded by directly asking Laban and Bethuel, Rebekah's father, for their decision. Gen 2400 hours 49. Their response acknowledged the undeniable: the thing has come from the Lord, we cannot speak to you bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before you, take her and go, and let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken. Gen 24:50-51. The servant then presented further gifts, sealing the betrothal. Having accomplished his mission with divine blessing, the servant was eager to return to Abraham immediately the next morning. Rebekah's family, understandably, requested a short delay, at least 10 days. Gen 2400 hours 55. But the servant gently insisted, "Do not delay me, since the Lord has prospered my way." Gen 2400 hours 56. Faced with this difference, the family resolved to consult Rebekah herself. "Let us call the young woman and ask her." Gen 2400 hours 57. Her response was crucial. Asked simply, "Will you go with this man?" she replied with remarkable, unhesitating resolve, "I will go." Gen 2400 hours 58. Despite the enormity of the decision, leaving her home and family forever to marry a man she had never met in a distant land, Rebekah displayed decisive faith, seemingly recognizing the divine hand in these events and willingly embracing her appointed destiny. Her consent affirmed her active participation in this pivotal moment. Rebekah departed with her nurse and attendants, accompanied by her family's blessing for immense prosperity and influence. Gen 24:59-61. As the servant led her caravan towards Canaan, Isaac, who was living in the Negev region near Beer Lahai Roi, went out into the field to meditate, or perhaps simply to walk, in the evening coolness. Gen 24:62-63. As Isaac looked up and saw the approaching camels, Rebekah also lifted her eyes and saw him from a distance. Learning from the servant that this was his master, she respectfully dismounted and veiled herself, a customary sign of modesty and deference before her betrothed. Gen 24:64-65. The servant then related to Isaac all that had transpired. The conclusion is both simple and profoundly significant. Then Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah his mother and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Gen 24 hours 67 minutes. Bringing her into his deceased mother's tent symbolized her taking the place of the matriarch, ensuring continuity. The explicit mention that Isaac loved her, and found comfort through her companionship after years of mourning Sarah, provides a warm, satisfying resolution to the divinely orchestrated quest. This detailed chapter beautifully illustrates several key themes. Divine providence is paramount, God's meticulous guidance, perfect timing, and direct answering of prayer are evident throughout. The narrative underscores the importance of marriage within the covenant framework, demonstrating the lengths Abraham went to ensure Isaac married appropriately to preserve the spiritual integrity of the lineage. It showcases faith in action, not just Abraham's initiating faith, but the servant's prayerful dependence and diligent execution of his duties. The servant's specific, expectant prayer serves as a powerful example. Furthermore, the story emphasizes that character matters, as God guided the servant to a woman whose actions revealed her kindness, industry, and hospitality. While God's sovereignty directs events, human agency remains crucial. Abraham's instruction, the servant's faithfulness, Rebekah's consent, and her family's agreement are all integral parts of the story. The servant stands out as a model of loyalty, wisdom, and piety. Ultimately, Chapter 24 is a testament to God's faithfulness in providing for his people and guiding the intricate steps needed to fulfill his covenant promises. Following the successful establishment of Isaac's marriage in Chapter 24, ensuring the continuity of the primary covenant line, Chapter 25 serves as a pivotal hinge in the Genesis narrative. It gracefully concludes the era of Abraham, acknowledging promises fulfilled beyond the main lineage, and dramatically introduces the next generation, the twins Jacob and Esau. This chapter masterfully orchestrates the transfer of focus, while simultaneously sowing the very seeds of sibling rivalry and conflict that will dominate the subsequent narratives, highlighting the intricate interplay between divine promises, human choices, and familial dynamics. Even after Sarah's death and Isaac's marriage, Abraham's life continued. The text records that he took another wife, or possibly concubine, interpretations vary, named Keturah, Gen 25:1. She bore him 6 sons, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. The narrative also briefly lists some of their notable descendants, such as Sheba and Dedan, through Jokshan, and the progenitors of the Midianites, through Midian, acknowledging the branching out of Abraham's lineage into various peoples who would later interact with Israel. Crucially, however, the text clarifies the inheritance arrangement. Abraham gave all that he had to Isaac. Gen 25:5. Regarding the sons of his concubines, a term here likely encompassing Hagar and Keturah, Abraham wisely provided for them during his lifetime. Abraham gave gifts to the sons of his concubines, and he sent them away from his son Isaac, eastward to the east country. Gen 25:6. This deliberate act secured Isaac's undisputed position as the sole heir of the covenant promise and the primary material inheritance, proactively preventing the kind of succession disputes that had arisen earlier with Ishmael. It reflects responsible planning within the covenant framework and geographically separates these other burgeoning lines from the central narrative unfolding in Canaan. Abraham's long journey of faith reached its peaceful conclusion at the age of 175. His death is described with dignity. He breathed his last and died in a good old age, an old man and full of years, and was gathered to his people. Gen 25:8. This phrasing suggests a life completed, fulfilled according to its divine purpose. Significantly, the task of burial fell to his two most prominent sons, Isaac and Ishmael. His sons buried him in the Cave of Machpelah, the field that Abraham had bought from the Hittites. Gen 25:9-10. They laid him to rest beside Sarah. The joint participation of Isaac and Ishmael in this final act of filial piety is remarkable. Despite past conflicts and divergent destinies, this moment implies a measure of reconciliation, shared respect for their father, or at the very least, a recognized duty that brought them together, offering a poignant, albeit temporary, sense of unity at the patriarch's passing. Before focusing entirely on Isaac's line, the narrative pauses to explicitly document the generations of Ishmael, Gen 25-12. It meticulously lists his 12 sons, including notable names like Nebaioth, the firstborn, and Kedar, emphasizing that they became 12 princes according to their tribes, Gen 25:16. Their dwelling places are described as stretching across a wide region, from Havilah to Shur, which is opposite Egypt in the direction of Assyria, Gen 25:18. Ishmael himself lived to be 137 before he too breathed his last and died and was gathered to his people, Gen 25:17. This section serves a vital theological purpose. It demonstrates the fulfillment of God's specific promises made earlier to Hagar, Gen 16:10, 21:18, and Abraham, Gen 17:20, concerning Ishmael. God had vowed to make him a great nation and the father of 12 princes, and this record confirms God's faithfulness extends even beyond the primary covenant lineage descending through Isaac. The ambiguous final note that Ishmael settled over against, or died in the presence of, all his kinsmen might hint at continued geographic proximity or underlying tension, but the main thrust is the validation of God's word. With Abraham and Ishmael's narratives concluded, the focus shifts squarely to Isaac, the designated heir. The text reminds us he was 40 when he married Rebekah, Gen 25:20, and then introduces a familiar challenge: Rebekah was barren. Gen 25:21. This immediately parallels the earlier struggle of Abraham and Sarah, highlighting a recurring theme. The propagation of the covenant line is not merely a matter of natural course but consistently requires divine intervention. However, Isaac's response differs significantly from his father's initial reaction. Instead of resorting to human schemes, like Abraham taking Hagar, Isaac's immediate action was to turn to God, and Isaac prayed, entreated, the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. His direct appeal to God demonstrates dependence and faith. The result was equally direct, and the Lord granted his prayer, was entreated by him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. Gen 25:21. This sequence underscores God's active involvement and responsiveness to prayer in the unfolding of his covenant plan. Rebekah's pregnancy proved to be unusually difficult and tumultuous. The children struggled together within her. Gen 25:22. The internal conflict was so violent that it caused her great distress, leading her to exclaim, "If it is thus, why is this happening to me?" She then took the initiative to go and inquire of the Lord, Gen 25:22, seeking divine understanding for her troubled condition. God's response came in the form of a crucial prophecy, delivered directly to Rebekah, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided, the one people shall be stronger than the other, the older shall serve the younger. Gen 25:23. 1. This divine oracle is immensely significant. It foretells not only the birth of twins but also the deep-seated antagonism that would characterize their relationship and that of the nations descending from them, Israel/Jacob and Edom/Esau. Most startlingly, it decreed a reversal of the customary rights of primogeniture. The older twin, Esau, was destined to serve the younger, Jacob. This divine pre-election sets the stage for much of the subsequent drama, indicating God's sovereign choice operating beyond conventional human standards, and lodging this critical knowledge specifically with Rebekah. At the time of delivery, the prophecy of twins was confirmed. The firstborn emerged distinctively red, all his body like a hairy cloak, leading to the name Esau, perhaps related to the Hebrew for hairy, Sar, or connected to his reddish color. Immediately following, his brother was born, significantly clutching Esau's heel, and was therefore named Jacob, Yaakov, a name derived from the Hebrew word for heel, akev, but also carrying the connotation of one who takes by the heel, or supplanter. Isaac was 60 years old at their birth, meaning he and Rebekah had endured 20 years of barrenness, Gen 25:26. As the boys grew, their inherent differences became pronounced. Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man, Ishtam, dwelling in tents. Gen 25:27. Esau embodied the rugged, physical, perhaps impulsive outdoorsman. Jacob's description as tam, often translated plain or quiet, but also meaning complete, perfect, or mild-mannered, suggests a more domestic, perhaps introspective or strategic disposition, comfortable within the family encampment. These contrasting natures would prove foundational to their interactions. Complicating the natural differences between the twins was the emergence of damaging parental favoritism. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Gen 25:28. This brief but telling verse reveals a fault line within the family structure. Isaac's preference appears somewhat superficial, based on his enjoyment of the savory venison Esau provided. Rebekah's favoritism towards Jacob might have stemmed from his quieter nature, his presence closer to home, or perhaps significantly, her awareness of the divine prophecy designating him as the one destined to rule. Regardless of the reasons, this partiality created an environment ripe for jealousy and manipulation, exacerbating the inherent rivalry between the brothers and contributing directly to the crises to come. The tension culminates in a pivotal incident that starkly reveals the brothers' core values. One day, Jacob was cooking a stew, likely made of red lentils, red pottage. Esau returned from hunting, utterly exhausted and famished, faint or, at the point of death, in his own dramatic words, Gen 25:29-30. He demanded impulsively, "Let me eat some of that red stew." This demand is noted as the reason for his alternative name, Edom, meaning red. Seeing his brother's desperation, Jacob, the planner, seized the opportunity with startling calculation, "Sell me your birthright now." Gen 25:31. The birthright, Bikorah, was a significant privilege, typically including leadership of the family upon the father's death and, crucially, a double portion of the inheritance. Esau, however, consumed by his immediate physical craving and fatigue, showed utter contempt for this future privilege. "I am about to die, of what use is a birthright to me?" Gen 25:32. For the temporary satisfaction of his hunger, he was willing to discard his long-term heritage. Jacob pressed his advantage, demanding Esau swear an oath to finalize the transaction. Esau readily swore, formally selling his birthright. Only then did Jacob provide the bread and lentil stew. Esau ate, drank, and left, apparently giving the momentous transaction no further thought. The narrative delivers a blunt verdict, thus Esau despised his birthright. Gen 25:34. Chapter 25 acts as a crucial bridge, marking the continuity of the covenant from Abraham to Isaac while simultaneously introducing the central conflict for the next generation. It highlights God's faithfulness in fulfilling promises, not only to Isaac but also to Ishmael. However, it immediately introduces seeds of conflict through the divine prophecy regarding the twins, their contrasting natures, the damaging effects of parental favoritism, and the stark contrast in values revealed in the birthright sale. This event dramatically illustrates the clash between valuing immediate gratification versus long-term spiritual and familial heritage. While Jacob's opportunism is ethically dubious, the narrative places primary culpability on Esau for despising his God-given status. The stage is now set, charged with tension and divine pre-election, for the complex unfolding of Jacob and Esau's intertwined destinies. Often overshadowed by the towering figures of his father Abraham and his son Jacob, Isaac takes center stage in Genesis chapter 26. This chapter provides a unique window into his life, revealing a man navigating challenges that uncannily mirror those faced by his father, while also showcasing his own character development. Through famine, deception, conflict, and covenant-making, the narrative underscores God's unwavering faithfulness to the covenant promises, now actively working through Isaac, the designated heir, despite his human frailties. The chapter opens with a familiar crisis. Now there was a famine in the land, besides the former famine that was in the days of Abraham. Gen 26:1, ESV. Facing scarcity, Isaac naturally headed towards Gerar, in the Philistine territory ruled by Abimelech, likely a dynastic name or title, echoing the king his father encountered, perhaps en route to Egypt, the traditional refuge during such times. However, God intervened directly, and the Lord appeared to him and said, "Do not go down to Egypt, dwell in the land of which I shall tell you." Gen 26:2. God explicitly commanded Isaac to remain within the confines of the promised land, Canaan. Accompanying this command was a powerful reaffirmation of the Abrahamic covenant, now directed specifically to Isaac. God promised his presence, "I will be with you," his blessing, the inheritance of all these lands, and the multiplication of his descendants, through whom all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. Gen 26:3-4. Significantly, God explicitly linked this continuation of the promise to the foundation laid by Abraham, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. Gen 26:5. This divine encounter redirected Isaac, confirmed his role as the covenant heir, and grounded his inheritance in God's faithfulness to his initial promise based on Abraham's obedience. Isaac's subsequent obedience in staying put, despite the famine, sets a different initial course than his father's earlier flight to Egypt. Despite the divine reassurance and command, Isaac soon demonstrated that he inherited not only his father's blessings but also his fears. While residing in Gerar, when the men of the place asked him about his wife, he said, "She is my sister," for he feared to say, "my wife," thinking, lest the men of the place kill me for Rebekah, because she was attractive in appearance. Gen 26:7. This is an almost exact repetition of Abraham's deception concerning Sarah in both Egypt, Gen 12, and Gerar, Gen 20. This striking parallel reveals the persistent nature of human weakness, even within the chosen covenant family. Fear trumped faith, leading Isaac to resort to the same flawed strategy his father had employed, rather than trusting in the divine protection God had just explicitly promised. It serves as a sobering reminder that patterns of sin and fear can easily replicate across generations if not actively addressed through faith. Isaac's deception, however, did not last indefinitely. When he had been there a long time, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out of a window and saw Isaac laughing, Mezahek, with Rebekah his wife. Gen 26:8. The affectionate interaction, the Hebrew root again playfully echoes Isaac's name, betrayed their true relationship. Abimelech immediately confronted Isaac, exposing the lie and rebuking him for the potential guilt he could have brought upon the Philistine people had someone unknowingly taken Rebekah. Gen 26:9-10. Remarkably, despite Isaac's deceit, God's protective hand remained evident. Abimelech, the pagan king, acted with more integrity in this situation than the patriarch, recognizing the potential sin and issuing a stern warning, "Whoever touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death." Gen 26:11. This outcome underscores God's grace. He shielded Isaac and Rebekah even amidst Isaac's failure, ensuring their safety and the integrity of the covenant line, demonstrating his ability to work through unexpected means to accomplish his purposes. The blessing persisted despite the beneficiary's flaws. Under Abimelech's protection, Isaac settled and began to farm. His efforts yielded extraordinary results. Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. The Lord blessed him. Gen 26:12. He accumulated immense wealth in livestock and servants, becoming exceedingly prosperous. The man became rich, and gained more and more until he became very wealthy. Gen 26:13-14. However, this conspicuous success provoked hostility. The Philistines envied him. Gen 26:14. Their envy manifested in destructive action. Now the Philistines had stopped and filled with earth all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father. Gen 26:15. This was a malicious act, striking at Isaac's vital resources and challenging his right to prosper in their territory. Water wells were lifelines in that arid climate. Stopping them was an act of aggression. Consequently, even Abimelech, perhaps pressured by his own people or wary of Isaac's growing power, asked him to move away. "Go from us, for you are much mightier than we." Gen 26:16. This sequence illustrates the double-edged nature of God's blessing. It brings prosperity but can also incite envy and conflict in a fallen world. Isaac's response to this hostility was not retaliation but patient withdrawal. He departed from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar and settled there. Gen 26:17. Demonstrating perseverance and respect for his heritage, he immediately set about redigging the wells his father had dug, which the Philistines had filled, even restoring their original names. Gen 26:18. Yet, conflict followed. When his servants found a fresh source of water, the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled, claiming ownership. Isaac named that well Ezek, contention. They dug another well, and the strife continued. He named it Sitnah, enmity, or accusation. Gen 26:19-21. Rather than escalating the disputes, Isaac chose peace and moved again. Finally, he dug a well that provoked no quarrel. He named it Rehoboth, broad places, or room, recognizing God's hand in finally providing undisputed space. For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. Gen 26:22. From Rehoboth, Isaac journeyed onward to Beersheba, a place rich with memories of his father. Significantly, the Lord appeared to him that same night. Gen 26:24, offering crucial reassurance. God identified himself. "I am the God of Abraham your father," commanded him, "Fear not, for I am with you," and once again reaffirmed the promise to bless and multiply his descendants, explicitly stating it was, "for my servant Abraham's sake." This divine encouragement grounded Isaac, reinforcing his identity and inheritance. In response, Isaac built an altar, worshipped God, pitched his tent, and his servants dug yet another well there. Gen 26:25. Isaac's patient perseverance, preference for peace, and reliance on God ultimately led to stability and renewed divine affirmation. The evidence of God's blessing on Isaac became undeniable, even to his former antagonists. Abimelech, accompanied by his advisor Ahuzzath and army commander Phicol, the same name/title encountered by Abraham, journeyed from Gerar to Beersheba specifically to seek out Isaac. Gen 26:26. Isaac understandably questioned their motives, reminding them of their previous hostility. Gen 26:27. Their reply was telling, "We see plainly that the Lord has been with you." Gen 26:28. They explicitly acknowledged that Isaac's resilience and prosperity were divinely sourced. Therefore, they proposed a formal treaty, an oath of non-aggression between them. They asked Isaac to pledge not to harm them, citing their, now reframed, good treatment in sending him away peacefully, and acknowledging his status as the blessed of the Lord. Gen 26:28-29. Isaac agreed, hosted a feast for them, and the following morning they exchanged binding oaths before departing in peace. Gen 26:30-31. This event, mirroring Abraham's experience at the same location, publicly validated Isaac's God-given standing and secured peace through mutual recognition and agreement. Divine timing seemed to affirm the newly established peace. That same day Isaac's servants came and told him about the well they had dug, reporting they had found water. Gen 26:32. Isaac named it Sheba, related to the Hebrew word for oath, Shevuah, or possibly 7, Shiva, which the text links directly to the enduring name of the city, Beersheba, Well of the Oath, or Well of 7, Gen 26-33, solidifying its significance for Isaac's generation. The chapter, however, concludes on a jarring and ominous note. It abruptly shifts focus to Isaac's son, Esau, noting that at age 40, the same age Isaac was when he married Rebekah, he took Hittite women to be his wives, Judith the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Basemath the daughter of Elon the Hittite. Gen 26:34. The consequence was immediate and severe. They made life bitter, literally, or a bitterness of spirit, for Isaac and Rebekah. Gen 26:35. By marrying local Hittite women, outsiders to the covenant faith, Esau acted contrary to the principle his grandfather Abraham had painstakingly established for Isaac. This choice demonstrated his disregard for the family's spiritual distinctiveness, consistent with his earlier despising of the birthright, and caused deep parental grief, foreshadowing further family strife and providing the pretext Rebekah would use in the next chapter. Chapter 26 provides crucial insights into Isaac's life and God's dealings with the second generation of patriarchs. It highlights the inheritance of both blessing and weakness, showing Isaac receiving the Abrahamic covenant yet repeating his father's specific sin out of fear. Critically, it demonstrates God's unwavering faithfulness and grace, as he protects and blesses Isaac despite his failures, reaffirming the covenant promises. Isaac's handling of the conflict over wells offers a model of patient perseverance and a preference for peace, trusting God ultimately to make room. The narrative also illustrates how God's blessing can attract opposition and envy from the world. The repetition of key events, deception, covenant at Beersheba, emphasizes the continuity of God's plan while also validating Isaac's role within it. Finally, the concluding note on Esau's marriages serves as stark foreshadowing, signaling his divergence from the covenant path and setting the stage for future family turmoil. Genesis chapter 27 unfolds as the dramatic and heart-wrenching climax to the sibling rivalry simmering since the birth of Esau and Jacob. It is a narrative steeped in human frailty, fading senses, intense family politics, favoritism, and calculated deception. At its heart lies the contest for the patriarchal blessing, a spoken word believed to carry irrevocable power to shape destiny. This chapter details how that blessing was deceitfully obtained, unleashing a torrent of bitterness, hatred, and ultimately, exile, setting the course for Jacob's future and forever altering the family's trajectory. The scene opens with Isaac in his twilight years, when Isaac was old and his eyes were dim, so that he could not see. Gen 27:1, ESV. This physical blindness symbolizes a deeper vulnerability and becomes a crucial element enabling the subsequent deception. Sensing his life might be nearing its end, "I do not know the day of my death," Isaac summoned Esau, identified explicitly as his older son, whom he loved. Gen 27:1, 25:28. His instructions were specific and rooted in his personal preference: "Take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food, such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die." Gen 27:3-4. Isaac intended to bestow the primary patriarchal blessing, conferring leadership, prosperity, and spiritual inheritance, upon Esau, aligning with tradition, favoring the firstborn, and his own affection, fueled by Esau's provision of game. His plan, however, seemed either ignorant of or deliberately set against the prophecy given to Rebekah years earlier, predicting the younger son's ascendancy. Crucially, Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. Gen 27:5. Her favoritism towards Jacob, perhaps bolstered by her memory of the divine prophecy, "The older shall serve the younger," spurred her into immediate, decisive action the moment Esau departed to hunt. She summoned Jacob and revealed Isaac's plan, then unveiled her own audacious counter-scheme. Her instructions were precise. Jacob was to fetch 2 choice young goats from the flock. She would then cook them into a savory dish mimicking the taste Isaac loved. Jacob's role was then to impersonate Esau, present the food to his blind father, and thereby receive the coveted blessing meant for his brother. Gen 27:6-10. Rebekah's motives remain debated. Was it purely maternal favoritism, a calculated move based on the prophecy, or a complex mix of both? Regardless, she initiated a deliberate conspiracy involving deceit against both her husband and her elder son, meticulously planning the execution. Jacob, initially, expressed not moral objection, but practical fear. "Behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking, or deceiving, meditee. Him and bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing." Gen 27:11-12. He foresaw the risk of exposure and the potential for disastrous consequences. Rebekah's determination, however, was absolute. She brushed aside his fears, dramatically assuming responsibility for any negative outcome. "Let your curse be on me, my son, only obey my voice." Gen 27:13. Reassured, or perhaps overridden, Jacob complied. He fetched the goats, Rebekah prepared the meal with skillful mimicry, and the impersonation began. Rebekah dressed Jacob in Esau's best garments, likely carrying his distinctive outdoors scent, and covered Jacob's smooth hands and neck with the soft skins of the young goats to replicate Esau's hairiness. Gen 27:14-17. It was a multisensory deception, carefully crafted to fool Isaac's diminished senses, primarily touch and smell, while navigating his likely awareness of vocal differences. The ensuing scene in Isaac's tent is thick with tension. Jacob approached, announcing his presence. Isaac, unable to see, questioned his identity. Jacob launched into a series of calculated lies. "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me." Gen 27:19. When Isaac expressed surprise at the speed of the hunt, Jacob compounded the deceit by invoking God's name, "Because the Lord your God granted me success." Gen 27:20. Still uncertain, Isaac requested Jacob come closer to be felt. The physical contact led to Isaac's famous, perplexed observation: "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." Gen 27:22. The tactile evidence tragically overruled his auditory senses. He did not recognize him, because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. Gen 27:23. Seeking final confirmation, Isaac asked point-blank, "Are you really my son Esau?" Jacob's response was a stark, affirmative lie: "I am." Gen 27:24. Seemingly convinced, Isaac requested the food, ate the goat meat disguised as venison, drank the wine, and then asked Jacob to kiss him. Smelling the familiar scent of Esau on the garments finally sealed the deception. Gen 27:25-27. Believing he was addressing his firstborn, Isaac then pronounced the powerful, formal patriarchal blessing upon Jacob, bestowing promises of agricultural abundance, dew of heaven, fatness of the earth, grain and wine, political dominion, let people serve you, be lord over your brothers, and the potent formula of divine protection: cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. Gen 27:27-29. The deception was complete. The primary blessing, once spoken, was considered effective and irrevocable. The timing was excruciatingly close. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, Esau his brother came in from his hunting. Gen 27:30. Unaware of the drama that had just transpired, Esau prepared his own savory meal and presented it to Isaac, eagerly anticipating the promised blessing. Gen 27:31. Isaac's confusion, "Who are you?" quickly turned to horror as Esau identified himself, "I am your son, your firstborn, Esau." The text states Isaac trembled very violently, Gen 27:33, finally grasping the enormity of the deception. His devastating words confirmed the blessing's finality. "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me, and I ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him? Yes, and he shall be blessed." Gen 27:33. Upon hearing this, Esau cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and pleaded desperately, "Bless me, even me also, O my father." Gen 27:34. Isaac could only confirm the grim truth, "Your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing." Gen 27:35. Esau bitterly connected Jacob's actions to his name. "Is he not rightly named Jacob, supplanter?" lamenting that Jacob had now cheated him twice, first the birthright, now the blessing. Gen 27:36. Esau's anguish poured out in repeated pleas, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me? Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Gen 27:36-38. Moved perhaps by his son's despair, Isaac offered what remained, which was less a blessing and more a stark prophecy of Esau's future, standing in sharp contrast to Jacob's fortune. "Behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall your dwelling be, and away from the dew of heaven on high." Gen 27:39. Instead of prosperity, scarcity. "He would live by your sword," implying a life of violence, conflict, and struggle. Gen 27:40. Furthermore, Isaac confirmed the reversal foretold in the prophecy, "And you shall serve your brother." Yet, a sliver of future resistance was included, "But when you grow restless, or break loose/roam freely, you shall break his yoke from your neck." Gen 27:40. This predicted the ongoing strife between their descendants, Edom and Israel, and Edom's eventual, though temporary, bids for independence. The consequence of the stolen blessing was immediate and toxic. Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. Gen 27:41. His grief curdled into a murderous resolve. Esau planned his revenge, intending to kill Jacob after Isaac's death, presumably following the period of mourning. "The days of mourning for my father are approaching, then I will kill my brother Jacob." Gen 27:41. Rebekah somehow learned of Esau's deadly intent. These words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. Her scheme to elevate Jacob now threatened his very life. She acted swiftly again, summoning Jacob, warning him that Esau was comforting himself by plotting murder, and urging him to flee immediately to her brother Laban in Haran. Gen 27:42-43. Her instruction to stay a few days until Esau's anger cooled proved wildly optimistic, as his exile would last 20 years. Her expressed fear, "Why should I be deprived of you both in one day?" Gen 27:45, reveals her awareness of the disaster she had helped create, fearing Jacob's murder and Esau's subsequent punishment or banishment. To persuade Isaac to send Jacob away without revealing the terrifying truth of Esau's murderous intentions, which would surely devastate the old man further, Rebekah employed a shrewd pretext. She voiced her, likely genuine, but strategically timed, frustration with Esau's Hittite wives. "I am weary of my life because of the Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be to me?" Gen 27:46. This masterfully played on Isaac's own documented grief over these marriages, Gen 26:35, and tapped into the foundational principle established by Abraham, the need for Jacob to marry within the covenant family. It provided Isaac with a compelling, religiously sound reason to send Jacob to Paddan Aram, Haran, to find a suitable wife among their relatives, effectively masking the urgent, life-threatening reality behind Jacob's departure. Chapter 27 serves as a powerful, cautionary tale about the devastating consequences of deception, favoritism, and unchecked ambition within a family. It vividly portrays how lies and manipulation can shatter trust, breed bitter resentment, and lead to exile and the threat of violence. The narrative underscores the perceived power and irrevocability of the spoken patriarchal blessing in that cultural context, demonstrating how words were believed to shape reality. It presents a raw picture of family dysfunction, driven by Isaac's blindness, physical and perhaps spiritual, Rebekah's manipulative favoritism, Jacob's calculating complicity, and Esau's volatile mix of impulsivity and grievance. While Jacob secured the blessing through deceit, his journey immediately became one of hardship and flight, marking the beginning of his own long path of testing and refinement, where the supplanter would himself experience deception. The chapter leaves lingering theological questions about the interplay between divine sovereignty, the prophecy, and flawed human means. While God's plan for Jacob's ascendancy unfolds, the narrative strongly implies disapproval of the methods employed, showcasing the painful, real-world consequences rather than endorsing the deceit itself. Examining Genesis chapters 21 through 27 reveals more than just a sequence of historical or biographical events. These narratives are interwoven with recurring themes that provide deeper theological insights and commentary on the nature of God, humanity, and the unfolding covenant relationship. Stepping back from the individual chapter analyses allows us to appreciate these significant threads running through the entire section. Perhaps the most dominant theme across these chapters is the persistent faithfulness of God to his covenant promises made to Abraham. Despite significant human failings, Abraham and Sarah's earlier impatience, leading to Ishmael's birth, Sarah's jealousy, Isaac repeating his father's deception out of fear, Rebekah and Jacob's calculated scheme, and Esau's disregard for his heritage, God consistently advances his plan. He ensures Isaac's miraculous birth, ch. 21, provides a substitute after testing Abraham's ultimate loyalty, ch. 22, guides the servant to the right wife for Isaac, ch. 24, answers Isaac's prayer for children, ch. 25, protects Isaac even in his dishonesty, ch. 26, and ensures the prophesied ascendancy of Jacob, albeit through complex means, ch. 25, 27. God's purpose is not ultimately thwarted by human weakness, his commitment to the covenant endures. These chapters intricately portray the dynamic relationship between God's sovereign will and human choices and actions. God clearly guides events, he makes promises, appears at critical moments, to Abraham, Isaac, answers prayers, Isaac's prayer, sends angels, before the servant, stopping Abraham, and delivers prophecies, to Rebekah. Yet, humans are not passive puppets. They respond with acts of profound faith, Abraham at Moriah, the servant's mission, but also with fear, deceit, manipulation, and favoritism, Abraham with Hagar, Isaac lying about Rebekah, Jacob and Rebekah deceiving Isaac. Paradoxically, God's sovereign plan often seems to progress through or in spite of these flawed human actions. Jacob receives the blessing foretold in the prophecy, but through ethically questionable means. This tension highlights human responsibility and the real consequences of choices, while affirming that God's ultimate purposes prevail, often in ways that challenge simple explanations. Far from presenting an idealized picture, these narratives realistically depict the prevalence of conflict and dysfunction even within the chosen family. We witness the bitter rivalry between Sarah and Hagar leading to expulsion, ch. 21, the underlying tension between Isaac and Ishmael, the destructive consequences of parental favoritism, Isaac preferring Esau, Rebekah preferring Jacob in ch. 25 and 27, and the explosive sibling rivalry between Jacob and Esau culminating in hatred and exile, ch. 25, 27. Jealousy, Sarah's, the Philistines in ch. 26, and competition for status, blessing, and resources fuel much of the drama. These stories serve as potent reminders of the brokenness inherent in human relationships and the devastating impact of unresolved conflict and partiality within the family unit. The concepts of the birthright, Bikorah, and the patriarchal blessing, Barakah, are central to the drama, particularly in chapters 25 and 27. In that cultural context, these were not mere formalities. The birthright carried tangible privileges of family leadership and a double portion of inheritance. The spoken blessing was perceived as a potent, effective conferral of divine favor, prosperity, and future destiny, considered irrevocable once uttered. The narrative underscores their immense value through the characters' actions. Esau's shocking indifference in trading his birthright for stew reveals his character, ch. 25, while Jacob and Rebekah's elaborate, high-stakes scheme to obtain the blessing highlights their, perhaps misplaced, understanding of its critical importance, ch. 27. The intense emotions surrounding the giving and receiving, or loss, of the blessing demonstrate its power in shaping identity and future prospects within the covenant framework. These chapters illustrate that faith is not a static state but a dynamic journey, marked by both high points of trust and low points of failure. Abraham grows from moments of doubt to radical obedience. Isaac inherits the promise, prays effectively, and shows patience, yet succumbs to fear and deception like his father. Jacob begins his journey driven by ambition and calculation, valuing the blessing but obtaining it wrongly, setting him on a path of exile that will become his crucible for refinement. Rebekah acts decisively, possibly driven by faith in prophecy, but employs manipulation. The unnamed servant provides a model of prayerful dependence and faithful execution. The collective picture is one where faith is constantly tested, often coexists with significant flaws, and requires ongoing reliance on God's guidance and grace. The life of Isaac, as depicted primarily in chapter 26, shows remarkable parallels with Abraham's experiences, facing famine, resorting to the wife-sister deception in Gerar before Abimelech, engaging in conflict over wells, and ultimately making a covenant treaty at Beersheba. This repetition emphasizes the continuity of God's covenant work across generations and suggests similar challenges and human responses recur. However, there are differences. Isaac appears perhaps less assertive than Abraham, more acted upon, especially in ch. 27. Yet, he also shows distinct acts of faith, like praying immediately regarding Rebekah's barrenness and obeying God's command not to go to Egypt. His story reinforces God's faithfulness to the promise already established through Abraham, confirming Isaac's role as the vital inheritor and generational bridge. In summary, Genesis 21-27 presents a rich, complex, and unflinchingly honest portrayal of God's covenant faithfulness interacting with the messy realities of human life, family dynamics, and the challenging journey of faith. Our journey through Genesis chapters 21-27 has traversed a landscape rich with divine promises fulfilled, profound tests of faith, complex family dynamics, and pivotal generational transitions. We witnessed the miraculous arrival of Isaac, the child of promise, followed by the heart-wrenching yet necessary separation involving Ishmael. We stood alongside Abraham atop Mount Moriah during the ultimate test of the Akedah and observed his practical wisdom in securing the family's first permanent stake in the promised land at Machpelah. The narrative baton was then passed to Isaac, whose life, while echoing his father's experiences in facing famine, deception, and neighborhood conflicts, confirmed God's continued faithfulness to the covenant line. Finally, we were introduced to the next generation, Jacob and Esau, whose contrasting natures and the dramatic struggle over the birthright and blessing set the stage for the future of the covenant people, culminating in Jacob's flight into exile. These chapters are far more than ancient chronicles, they are foundational narratives exploring the enduring tension between divine sovereignty and human fallibility. They offer an unflinchingly honest portrayal of the patriarchs, presenting them not as plaster saints, but as real people who wrestled with fear, doubt, jealousy, and ambition, even as they walked in faith and experienced God's direct intervention. It is precisely this honesty that lends these stories their enduring power and relatability. We see God's unwavering commitment to his covenant promises, yet we also see those promises unfold amidst messy human choices, deceit, and broken relationships. The struggles over inheritance, the weight ascribed to spoken blessings, the pain of barrenness and the joy of answered prayer, the devastating consequences of favoritism and sibling rivalry, these themes resonate across millennia because they speak to core aspects of the human condition. They challenge us to consider the nature of true faith, the value we place on spiritual heritage versus immediate gratification, and the way God's grace operates even through our imperfections. Ultimately, Genesis 21-27 testifies to a God who remains steadfastly committed to his purposes, patiently weaving his redemptive plan through the often tangled threads of human history. The journey of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob demonstrates that the path of faith is rarely straightforward, often marked by trials and even moral ambiguity, yet it is a path undergirded by God's persistent faithfulness and overarching providence. As Jacob flees towards an uncertain future in Haran, the story pauses but does not end, inviting us to continue exploring the unfolding saga and witness how God continues to shape his people through hardship, encounter, and eventual restoration. These foundational stories remain a vital resource for understanding the roots of faith and the intricate ways God works in, through, and sometimes despite, the complexities of human life.